Imagine this. You're standing outside on a clear day, gazing at the vast expanse of sky above. It's a rich, vibrant blue, or is it? Now, picture a world where that color simply doesn't exist. What if I told you there was a time when humanity didn't even have a word for blue? And not just one civilization, but almost every ancient culture you can think of. Hard to believe, right? But that's exactly what we're exploring today. How could a color so ubiquitous now have been invisible, or at least unacknowledged, for much of human history? Let's take a closer look. The curious case of Homer's world. We start in ancient Greece, a civilization celebrated for its art, philosophy, and literature. You'd think such a sophisticated society would have had a word for every color under the sun. But if you read Homer's epic works, like the Iliad or the Odyssey, you'll notice something strange. Black? Mentioned countless times. White? Check. Red? A fair number of references. But blue? Not once. Instead, Homer describes the ocean as wine dark, a puzzling choice for something we instinctively associate with blue. And honey? That's green. Sheep? He calls them violet. Was Homer colorblind? Were the ancient Greeks somehow unable to see blue? The answer, surprisingly, is no. Humans developed the ability to see color millions of years ago. So why this glaring omission? To solve this mystery, historians and linguists had to dig deeper, and what they found was mind-blowing. A global pattern. It wasn't just the Greeks. Across ancient civilizations, from the Hebrew Bible to Icelandic sagas, from Indian epics to Chinese classics, there's a notable absence of the word blue. Instead, descriptions of the sea and sky focus on qualities like vast, stormy, or silent, never their color. What makes this even more fascinating is that other colors like black, white, red, yellow, and green appear in these texts. But blue? Nowhere to be found. So, what's going on? How could something as prominent as the sky's hue escape notice? To answer that, we turn to the evolution of language itself. The evolution of color words. Linguists studying the history of languages noticed a peculiar pattern. Every culture's language develops words for colors in the same sequence. First come black and white, the basics of night and day, light and darkness. Next is red, often associated with blood and danger. Then yellow and green, tied to identifying ripe or unripe foods. And finally, blue, the latecomer. Why this order? The first theory is practical. Black, white, and red have immediate survival value. Green and yellow help distinguish plants. But blue? How often do you encounter blue objects in nature? Blue fruits are rare. Blue animals? Even rarer, and often there, blue, is an illusion created by light rather than pigment. Without a pressing need to name blue, it simply didn't enter the linguistic picture. The second theory involves technology. Unlike red or black, which can be easily made from clay or charcoal, blue pigments are incredibly difficult to produce. It wasn't until the Egyptians created a synthetic blue pigment that we see the word appearing in their language. In a sense, you couldn't name it until you could make it. Seeing is naming. But does that mean ancient people couldn't see blue? Not exactly. Scientists studying modern tribes, like the Himba people of Namibia, found a fascinating twist. The Himba don't have a distinct word for blue, and when shown a grid of green and blue squares, they struggled to identify the blue one. Yet when shown different shades of green, they excelled at spotting subtle differences that most English speakers would miss. This suggests that language doesn't just reflect what we see, it shapes it. It's not that the Himba are incapable of perceiving blue, it's that without a word for it, their brains don't categorize it as distinct. Once a culture develops a word for a color, a fascinating feedback loop kicks in. Language trains the brain to exaggerate the differences between colors, making them stand out more. Without a name, those distinctions blur together. Language shapes reality. Think about learning a new language. At first, it sounds like an indistinguishable stream of noise. But as you start to grasp its structure, you hear individual words and patterns more clearly. The same principle applies to colors. Once we name something, we see it differently. The sky hasn't changed, but our perception of it has. This isn't just semantics, it's neuroscience. Studies show that naming a color creates neural pathways that heighten our awareness of it. In other words, our brains actively construct the world we experience, and language plays a crucial role in that process. A new perspective on the world. So, what happens if we couldn't see blue? The truth is, we'd still see the sky, the sea, and butterflies, but without the word blue, we might describe them as dark, vast, or greenish. Over time, without a distinct name, blue might fade into the background of our perception, blending with other hues. But once a word exists, it unlocks something extraordinary. It allows us to separate, categorize, and marvel at the beauty of a color we'd overlooked. Blue, once invisible to our ancestors, becomes an integral part of our identity and culture. It shapes art, fashion, and even national symbols. Just look at flags, fabrics, and paintings from around the world today. The story of blue is a testament to the power of language and the human mind. It shows us that what we see isn't just a reflection of the world, but a creation of our brains, influenced by the words we use. It's a reminder to look beyond the obvious and question the assumptions we take for granted. So, the next time you look up at the sky, think about how far we've come, not just in seeing the world, but in naming it. And who knows? Maybe there are colors out there we haven't discovered yet, waiting for a name. Stay curious. Bye-bye.